All right, well, we're getting back up stage here. We'll just go ahead and get right into it because we've got 16 items on our agenda. And so it takes a while to get to some of the meat and potatoes of this, but we've got some important things to discuss this evening. Starting off with our item F1, the millage rate 2016 adoption. And I'm sorry, I'm totally skipping the meeting minutes and the public comment section. Sorry about that. So first off, we'll open it up for public comments. And so if anyone wants to speak, the only rule is we're going to allow 3 minutes for comments, and then if you exceed over the 3-minute limit, we'll just ask you to politely wrap it up. And so anyone who wants to speak on any matter before the council, this will be your one chance to speak, and then afterwards it's closed public comments. And so just give us your name, where you live, and then you can start your public comments. Yeah, you look like you have something to say. Just give us your name and where you live.
Hi, my name is Sharon Ravert. I am the Executive Director of Peachtree Normal, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I grew up in Decatur. I had a lot of cousins that lived in Clarkston, but I've never been a taxpayer here. I was a taxpayer in DeKalb County. I now live in Dahlonega. I'm just very impressed with the adult conversation that we're having around cannabis. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I hope that every single one of you will consider voting yes for this ordinance.
Thank you very much. All right, any other public comment? Yes, ma'am. Please come up.
Hi, good evening. I'm very thankful to be here today. My name is Dr. Umadana Balan. My home is in Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm a family physician in occupational medicine, and I also practice cannabis therapeutics medicine. And I just want to, I'm just happen to be here for the holidays, and I was told that this meeting was occurring. I just wanted to let you folks know that the need for education about this cannabinoid medicine, it wasn't until about 6 years ago I started to learn about this, because I lost my mother in January 2012. This medicine is still not being taught to doctors and healthcare providers, and I just want people to understand that I want this to be known. This system has been around since 1992, and it actually has evolved over 600 million years. And doctors don't know that this medicine, cannabis, was actually prescribed by doctors, and it was in the pharmacopoeia till 1942, and it was legal in this country, and there's no deaths from this medicine. And also that the U.S. government has the patent for cannabinoids as an antioxidant and as a neuroprotectant. And this medicine should be available. It's not for everybody, but it should be a first-line option. And I am proud to say that I don't contribute to the opioid epidemic. I made this statement over 2 years ago. Cannabis is not an entrance drug. It is an exit drug from pharmaceuticals and narcotics. And I really believe at this point with all the opioid epidemic, this is about harm reduction, and we need the education and people and all of you folks to be educated about it, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? All right, item F13, I'll turn it back over to the Chair of our Public Safety and Legal Committee, Maria Williams, on the adoption of what we're calling the marijuana ordinance.
This particular ordinance came to our attention because we had various people within our Clarkston community who had been cited or ticketed. They paid various fines. Some of them paid $200, some of them paid all the way up to the $662. We decided to study the issue. We've had 2 committee hearings. We've had lead law enforcement officers against prohibition. We had Georgia Care here. We had Kenneth Glasgow from the formerly incarcerated People's Society come speak to us. So we did a lot of fact-finding on this issue, and we decided that the starting point is that for every city in Georgia, those cities have the ability to regulate in the area of possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana to try and dispose of those cases. So when we start from that position, we say, okay, well, what do we really want to do, and what can we legally do? Currently, you cannot decriminalize possession of marijuana because the Georgia legislature has deemed it a criminal activity. So we can't do that. What we can do is fix the fine. I believe that we have a consensus on the fine being $75, and I want to talk a little bit about the fine. If the fine is a tricky area of the law, and we've looked into this, and I'm an attorney, I've actually looked into it all. If the fine is too low, it can be considered a de facto decriminalization. That basically embroils us in litigation that we don't want. So we've stuck with that particular area, we stuck with that particular fine at $75. We've also eliminated the ability to imprison by court order for the possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana that's cited under the Clarkston City Code Ordinance. If an officer chooses to cite, and we're going to encourage them not to do this, but if an officer chooses to cite an individual under the misdemeanor law, Georgia statute, that is a whole different ballgame. But we're encouraging all officers to use our code ordinance, cite the person, and just basically keep it moving at a $75 fine, with no ability to imprison a person or threaten to imprison for the possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana. Right now, we encourage all cities around Georgia to take a strong look at their laws in this area, because the Georgia State Legislature allows them to look at their laws in this area, allows them to regulate in this area as far as trying and disposing of possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana. I don't have the ordinance, so if you could read it.
Yeah, actually, I don't have it in front of me.
I'll
Want me to read it?
Vice Chair to read it.
Yeah, okay.
An ordinance by the City of Clarkston to amend Chapter 12 of the City Code to establish the punishment for the municipal code violation of possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana, to encourage law enforcement officers to issue citations for such offense rather than effectuating arrest, and to repeal conflicting ordinances. Whereas the City Council finds that enforcement of the state law prohibiting possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana has been inequitable and has fallen disproportionately on certain subsets of the population. And whereas arrest and/or conviction for the state law offense of possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana presents employment obstacles which marginalize broad swaths of the population. And whereas the City Council desires to facilitate equity in the administration of criminal justice. And whereas OCGA 3632-6 grants municipal courts concurrent jurisdiction to try and dispose of cases wherein a person is charged with possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana when such conduct occurs inside a municipality. Now therefore be it ordained by the City of Clarkston as follows. Section 1, City of Clarkston law enforcement officers are hereby encouraged by the City Council to issue citations for violation of City Code to individuals possessing 1 ounce or less of marijuana rather than arresting such individuals, when possession of marijuana is the sole non-traffic offense by the individual observed by the officer. Section 2, City Code, Section 12-6 is hereby amended to read as follows. A, it shall be unlawful for any person to possess 1 ounce or less of marijuana within the corporate limits of the city. B, conviction for violation of this ordinance shall be punished by a fine of $75. C, no person convicted of violating this ordinance shall be punished by confinement for any period of time. Section 3, the various clauses and subsections of this ordinance are intended to be severable. Should any of the provisions of this ordinance be deemed invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, it is the intent of the City Council that the remaining provisions remain in full force in effect.
Very good. All right,
Wait a
so,
minute, I've got some on the back.
I'm sorry, please.
Page 2. Section 4, all ordinances and portions of ordinances in conflict with the terms of this ordinance are hereby repealed as to the subject matter of this ordinance. Section 5, this ordinance shall become effective upon its approval by the City Council, signature by the mayor, and approval as to form by the city attorney.
Very good. All right, resolution's been read. So open the floor up for a motion on this agenda item. And just to clarify, this resolution was sponsored by Councilman Dean Moore, Councilman Mario Williams. Right. Okay. Yes, sir.
I move to adopt marijuana ordinance to consider and approve an amendment to Chapter 12 to establish punishment for the municipal code violation of possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana.
Okay.
I second that.
Second. All right. Any discussion? Anything? No? Anything else to say? Okay. I wanted to just thank Councilman Moore and Williams for all the public hearings they had, for bringing in all the experts on both sides of the issue. And thanks to our police department and our staff for helping us, craft something that was going to be a practical policy but still make a difference. We were talking earlier at the work session about what's the appropriate fine, and not wanting to go below $50 because it could be considered trivial, as Councilman Williams mentioned, and that could sort of set up future fights with the legislature or courts or whatever. And we're trying to be as revolutionary light as we can here. I think there's a lot of people up here and in the community who think the laws, state and federal, should completely change. But we're city council, we can only affect what happens in our jurisdiction. And so I want to put a finer point on what Councilman Williams said earlier. The fine that was the standard fine for simple possession was $600, $700. And we were talking earlier about minimum wage workers. That's close to a month's salary for a minimum wage worker. The Pew Research Center just earlier this year released a report that nearly half of Americans would have trouble coming up with $400 to pay an emergency room visit. And that's just $400. And so if you think about a situation with the way drug laws are enforced in this country and in this state, it disproportionately affects lower income communities of color, even though the usage rates tend to skew more towards whiter and more affluent. And if you want to just kind of take it a little bit further, there has been a trend, I think, over the past decades of shifting a lot of the expenses from county and city governments onto the backs of their residents and citizens through increasingly higher court fines. Ferguson, Missouri was well known several years ago for being a police department that basically funded its police department through municipal court fines of the people it was there to protect. And so it's kind of a bold move for us to say, well, we're willing to give up close to $30,000, $40,000 a year in revenues. We don't have a huge budget. You saw earlier our millage rate, and we're a small city. And so, but we do, I think, recognize in this policy that that there is a need for criminal justice reform to happen at all levels of government. This is the only area that a municipality or a county government can actually legislate on. And so we're not saying it's legalized, but we're also saying we don't want to ruin someone's life or drain their bank account for what could be considered a simple mistake. And so I'm very proud to be up here with this council, to have this prerogative to hopefully change people's lives. If it just affects one person, affects a couple dozen people, that's probably the extent of it. But that is where we have to begin. And hopefully other cities and counties will look at their own, what's best for their communities and what they think would be an appropriate amount. Clearly $600 to $1,000 is excessive, is punitive, and it creates a blowback effect in the community that I would argue probably causes more crime and more harm to our people. So with that, I'll stop. I'll pause. Any other?
Yeah,
Yes.
I would like to bring some more comments into this. And the most important thing is, as a city, we recognize that this is still against the law. And I want to make sure that point is very clear, that as a city, we understand that this is still, in terms of possession of marijuana, against the law. However, again, we're reducing the fine. And we are making sure, in terms of supporting our police staff, that we provide them another mechanism for issuing out tickets where they're not doing $600 fines. So from a council perspective and from my perspective, we are making sure that we recognize that we must comply with the state of Georgia in terms of what is currently on the books, but also make sure that we have some type of understanding for the people who are involved so that they can have a second chance in case they get arrested with this and not put into jail. And so that's really important in terms of what we take from this. And so that's what I want to make sure the message is heard.
I also want to add that At first, I mean, there was a talk about $5 fine, and in principle, I really definitely support that. However, I know we can't do that, and I would have loved to go with a lesser number of $50, but yet, $75, I believe, still is a lot of money. I'm just saying that, and I hope there is going to be a day that's going to come. I hope to be on the city council again in the few years coming where we're going to say we're not going to charge anybody any fine.
Very good. All right, any other discussion? Okay, all right, we got a motion and a second on amending the Chapter 12 to establish punishment for which a $75 fine for under the municipal code in the violation of possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana. And so that's the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for the clap. I appreciate that.